Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lebanon Utilities Service Board meeting for Wednesday, February 20th, 2019. I want to call the meeting to order and confirm all appropriate notifications. There was a working session prior at which no official decisions were made. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 23rd, 2019 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? And if so, I would entertain a motion to approve those.
I make a motion we approve the minutes from January 23rd.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Dan to approve the minutes from January 23rd. If there's no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the 69 kV reroute materials purchase. I believe Trace and Jeff are going to address the board on some of the information on this materials purchase. Guys?
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, I'd like to back up just a little bit. I've been handing things over to Jeff for this project, but there's a few questions, a few hiccups, and I'd like to just back up and explain, what the project is, why we need to do it. It's not a matter that we just want to, but we need to, and then go from there. This project is a relocation of a 69 kV line so that we can get off of Indianapolis Avenue due to the Indianapolis Avenue Phase 2 project that the city is doing. So that's why we're doing the project. Now what we're doing is we're actually taking the line and we're bypassing the Lao substation along with the 69 kV line along Indianapolis Avenue to the north from Lao substation. What that allows us to do is it allows us to get our 69 kV off of that part of Indianapolis Avenue and allows us to move a pole which we've been told that we have to move. The reason that we're kind of in a pinch is really a timing issue. I've been talking with Kevin Krulik and we've got a little extra time, but we're into a point now where materials take some time to get. And we're in the process of actually going out for bid for the work because we were asked to, and that's perfect. We're going out for bid for the construction. And the bids, we have a schedule now for that, where the engineering is now complete. The construction bid package is being prepared and it will be available February 25th. There will be a pre-bid with contractors on March 5th. The bids will be due March 26th. We plan on awarding April 3rd and starting construction as soon as we can after that. That's not very many weeks away for material to get here.
So I have a question.
Yes.
In the paper it said the pre-bid conference and the classified item would be February 25th. That's been changed, the pre-bid conference?
That's correct. The pre-bid conference, I didn't realize that it would got in the paper that way. That's okay. The actual pre-bid conference is supposed to be March 5th. So we'll need to make a correction.
Will it still be at 10 o'clock?
Yes.
Hey, Trace, real quick, while we're asking questions, this is a permanent relocation, right? This is not a temporary move it while the construction happens, then move it back. This is
no. This is permanent to get it out of that area.
Okay.
What we have to do is we have to get easement. Their easement was actually being written today. We should have it in hand tomorrow. Then we can get it signed by the property owner and recorded. So that's where we are with that particular piece.
When's that going to happen again? I'm sorry.
Tomorrow we're supposed to have it in our hands.
So board, let me, if I may jump in here on a couple of items and let's just clarify. So this is typically, as you know, there's been a rule of thumb that this board has adhered to, that before we start purchasing and letting contracts, purchasing materials and letting contracts, we typically would like to have the land in hand and have that issue resolved.
Yes.
We have a different circumstance because we're being told, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is an NDOT-based project, Indianapolis Avenue.
That's correct.
They are dictating design parameters to us.
Yes.
And there's NDOT funding that necessitates moving forward with that project.
Yes.
That is dictating to us a timeline and a design.
That is correct.
Okay. So these were not choices that the utility made. These are not things that we came back and said, whoops, we like this better. These are being dictated to us and we are reacting to them. To also remind you, because of a staff change, our timeline is a little more compressed than we would have liked.
Correct.
So a couple things that the board needs to consider is how we're going to move forward in ordering materials when we don't have easement in hand. And, you know, there's some things that like that that are up in the air. We also have not received Board of Works approval for this change. I can't speak to that issue, but we would need, that's another step in this that we would need to move forward with and go to the Board of Works and say, hey, what do you want us to do? To be clear,
That's because of an ordinance that was written stating that anything that is built overhead, we need to come to the board and ask permission. It's a 69 kV line. There's no way that we can't.
it's the utility, it's the overhead, it's the above-ground utility ordinance in
Yes.
response to cell towers.
And also the routing as well,
Yes.
not just necessarily above ground versus in ground. So
That's correct, yes.
right.
Yep.
Let me ask this, do we have any doubt or any concern on getting the easement or the property? I mean, nothing's
No.
done until it's done, but
No, not at all. I wouldn't be here asking if there was any doubt.
So,
So part of that project's on a city street. Is there any easement problems there with homeowners?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, Joe.
That's
no,
a good question.
and I
Great
just
question.
want to set the table here that this is not something that we want to engage in.
Right.
These are not funds that we want to spend, and we were happy with our original design. This is being dictated to us, and we're trying to react to it. So, a couple things moving forward. You know, we need to always keep in mind that we like to have easement in hand before we order parts. I don't know if the Board of Works kicks us back, if what their
Correct.
response is going to be. I would struggle with that, given that it's being mandated to us that we do this. They may say, put it someplace else. I don't know that. If that were the case, are some of these parts recyclable? Meaning, could we use them if
We
they?
can reuse them other places. Because of our contract with Annixter, that's our purchasing arm, they actually go out and actually do our bidding to make sure that we stay within state compliance. That's a contract we have with them. They actually would deliver the parts and pieces, and I'm sure there would be a slight restocking fee, but they're all standard materials. It's not like we just need them at our facility.
So I think hearing that, I just want to suggest that there may not be as much risk affiliated with pre-ordering things as we might think. And I know that's been the policy of the board. Again, I'm not stumping one way or the other. I'm just trying to set the table here of what Trace and Jeff are trying to do is react to a situation that's been dictated to them.
Well, if we don't act effectively on this, if we don't take action on it, then we're under the scrutiny of corrupting the Phase 2 of Indianapolis project, right?
I would defer to Trace on that.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So we really don't have a choice.
What if we have to, what if we have to go a different direction? I mean, what's our options?
That would be a total punt. To go another direction would be completely changing the connection point somewhere else in the system and coming back into town along a road right-of-way. And I'm talking multiple miles to be able to do that.
So that would have a huge impact.
Oh, that would,
Well, and it's fair to say we'd want a very valid reason for that change, if that was requested or.
that's why we didn't pick that route to start with, is because it was so much more expensive.
Yep.
Right, no, understand. But I guess my question is, we can move forward and order the parts, but we still do not have a definite yes or no whether we can get the easement.
Not until tomorrow.
Okay.
And even then, to be clear, Bill, that's when the survey work has been completed.
Right.
And the exhibits will be ready for presentment to the landowner for consideration.
That's my question.
So that won't be done, that's an indeterminate, we don't know. That could take a week, a day, a month, we don't know. But again, we're reacting, right?
Yes,
So, and then the Board of Works could come back and say, we don't like it, we don't approve it, do something different. The problem with those, we've done our best effort, correct me if I'm wrong, at coming up with this reactionary route to the Indianapolis Avenue project. This is our best effort at coming up with a solution that actually works pretty well.
A very good long-term solution.
But, so we can't predict what the Board of Works will say to that. So if they're the ones that say, hey, we don't like this, I think the Board of Works is then saying that the Indianapolis Avenue project is going to have an NDOT problem.
So we would have to go back to the original route. And we can't use the original route, is that correct?
That's correct.
For what reason? Explain that.
Because the area that we were given for easement to be able to set a steel pole, which is what would need to be set, there's not enough room. It's an 8-foot diameter foundation that would have to be placed, and we have 6 feet. So we had to change.
Would you please explain briefly the Annixter contract?
Yes. A few years back, we went out for proposals for a material handling company. What that material handling company does is make sure that they go out and they get bids for all of the materials, and then they sell us that material at their cost plus a markup. That was the way the contract has been set up. That was actually the way it was actually presented to all of the proposers at the time.
And the reason that was done, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The reason that was done is that there were some problems in managing inventory.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, we've got inventory that has no vital usage or value to Lebanon utilities. So when we engaged with Annixter, they took care of all that inventory. We sold it back to them, and now they give us what we need as we need it, and it freed up a huge amount of capital because we don't have inventory sitting on the shelf waiting for our needs.
The State Board
So
of...
this satisfies the bidding process, so to speak?
Yes.
Yes.
This type of arrangement?
For materials, yes.
Okay.
And so, Mr. Smith, when we did away with our inventory system, one of the things we did was try to figure out how to go about that. And we had inventory that we needed to get rid of, and we had some informal discussions with the State Board of Accounts, who applauded us for moving to a inventory supplier rather than trying to manage our own, because they're fraught with problems through many utilities.
Yeah, I want to, I guess, add something. Is part of the reason I view this as a low risk, and from talking to Trace and Jeff Greeno, was that it's $60,000, but of that, if there's any minor wrinkle in the plan, probably 80% of that is stuff we use that could be stocked that we would probably use within the next year. And of the stuff that we would restock, there's maybe a 10% restocking fee. So I didn't do an in-depth calculation, but this $60,000 is probably maybe $10,000 less in risk. And what that's doing is helping us expedite an NDOT project. And NDOT's hard to work with, or any transportation cabinet thing's hard to work with, not because they're bad at their jobs, but just because their timing is very, very much hurry up and wait, start, stop, and we have to react to get the state funding. So I'm supportive of what they're doing for that reason. I think it's very low risk for the board. I don't think we want to get in the habit of ordering parts before we have the easements in place, but I think it's a good project.
Can I add one more thing to that? That
Please.
is, with this project, we have the ability to retire Lao substation, which right now that particular area, that location is the corner that they are redoing to make it more aesthetically pleasing. And if anybody's been at Lao substation, it is not aesthetically pleasing. And so I think that's what the board will, once it's explained to the board, they will understand that it gives us that as well. It really cleans up that corridor coming in on 32. That's why I think it's even a less risk.
Well, it sounds like this is a unique situation, a little bit out of the ordinary, something we wouldn't normally do, but the risk is fairly low. And worst case scenario is we have some equipment that we would still be able to use majority of it at a low cost. And is that fair?
Yes, very fair.
All right, any other questions for Jeff or Trace or the other Jeff?
I'd move to approve the annexure quote for a not-to-exceed amount of $60,153.17 for materials to proceed with the 69 kV reroute.
I would second that.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by Jim to approve the 69 kV reroute materials purchase. Any other questions or discussions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, next item on the agenda is consulting and professional services agreement. Legal counsel Jeff Jacob will address the board here.
Thank you, board. As you will recall and have been provided, Sandy Solutions has provided IT services to the board for, I believe, 3 years. Is that right, gentlemen? And that was moving from an in-house service to a outsourced provider. If you recall, in December, their contract was expiring, and we extended that through the first part of March. What you have in front of you is an agreement that I think, after we've been through somewhat of a honeymoon period, has focused the terms of the agreement, and more particularly the scope of services and time and cost that Sandy will provide. As you will see, there's been some modifications to the Amendment 1 Statement of Work that you were recently supplied, and one of the only change from what you had recently seen was on page 2, the software services went from $24.60 a month to $14.78.22, and that's basically licensing costs. One of the things that I want to point out is
That's per month?
So, I'm sorry?
Is that per month?
Yes. So one of the things that I wanted to point out was that that is going to be a variable cost. If we add employees, if we add workstations, add software packages, that's going to change, and that's why Sandy was able to kind of hone down on that cost a little bit as this agreement has matured. So the folks from Sandy are here, happy to answer any questions as well as I.
Jeff, and I know you just said this, that's a decrease from the previous cost per month. Is that what you said, or did I hear it wrong?
No, you heard it correctly. Originally, it was $2,460. Now, I do believe that that is an increase from what our last monthly estimate was under the original agreement. I believe it was $1,000 a month, if I recall correctly. And that's a pass-through cost, and that's a licensing cost that Sandy manages for us and then passes that cost through.
Has our chief financial officer left the room?
She just left, yes.
Yeah, well, what's the question, sir? Maybe I can help.
I sent an email. Well, Sandra responded to an email on February 18th, Monday, about how much we have budgeted for IT consulting services this year. And the response was, we budgeted $270,396 for IT contractual services. Based on what we have already paid in 2019 and the new contract, we will be at approximately $289,110 for the year. In other words, $18,714 more than budgeted. I wonder if this change in the software cost would lessen that budget shortfall.
It would affect it a little bit, but I think the main difference is prior, the contract was one contract with the City of Lebanon and us, and they split out the contract. They have a separate one with City of Lebanon and a separate contract with us, and we had meetings and went through in detail with them as far as what their rates were based off of what services they provide and number of hours they provide, and our costs ended up being a little bit higher because apparently we were making out a little bit better when it was one contract than with two. But overall, I think we're going to be better off when it's one contract. It's going to be easier to manage and seeing what projects they're working on, because there were some problems with the original honeymoon contract, as Jeff called it, where we were having, in the past, having trouble tracking whether they were working for the city or working for us. So.
Okay. What efforts were made to keep the Sandai contract within budget? In other words, I know part of the budget is, part of our packet included 12 listed projects, and that's included in this budget, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You know, it looks like to me, if we wanted to stay within budget, that part of the contract includes payment monthly to Sandai of $24,993.
Yes.
And it looks like to me that if we wanted to stay within budget, we could reduce that amount by 7.5% to $23,121. And if we wanted to reduce that amount, it looks like to me it would come from the projects list.
Well, I don't know that this is just project-driven, Aaron. I mean, I think you have to step back and look at how an IT system of this complexity operates, and it's really hard to put your hands around what it's going to take to make that work, because flaws come along the way. So this is a prediction. It's a prediction. So I don't believe that the insinuation that the budget was not respected is correct.
Yeah, I guess I would add on to that. It's not just the projects, because one thing, when I was doing my due diligence working with Sandy, I had Mr. Costa show me their server room, and I didn't realize how extensive that server room was back there. We'll have to give you a tour of that sometime. They've got virtual machines in there to run software that the city doesn't have, so that's part of the reason we pay a little bit more than them. And this is just a pretty intense and extensive site. So they have a lot that we're paying for in this contract that isn't just projects. The projects are hours built in there that, based off of their expertise and our internal expertise, we have some good IT people that do other things here that work with them, that are projects we need to stay up to date, stay in compliance with, industry standards so that we have viruses take down our system and make sure that everything works properly.
Right, I certainly know that Sandy's well respected by Lebanon Utilities in the cities for the excellent service they've delivered, and I don't have a problem with that. As a board member, I like to stay within budget if we can.
To that point, okay, you have a car. It's a very simpler, I mean, it's simpler, and I budget X number of dollars a year to budget that, or to keep that car running. But when the engine blows up, those are unseen, unknown factors that were not predicted.
And if those unknown factors arise, they'll come before us for an additional request. Is that correct?
It depends on the issue.
Right. The point I'm making is if it was prudent, if the board thought it was prudent to stay within budget, whether some of these planned projects could be put off to next year and thereby reduce the monthly payment amount that we'd be making.
Before we went into a relationship with Sandy, and it's not just Sandy, before we went into a structured support system for our IT system, we had a major failure. And in that major failure, there was compromise between emergency services, services for people, electrical services, and again, the police department were not getting their emails, the fire department were not getting their emails. So with all due respect, we do want to stay within the budget if at all possible, but not at compromising the service that we owe our clients.
Yeah, and let me add on to that. When we create a budget, it's based off of quotes from vendors, and we didn't get this, we didn't have that information from Sandy until after the budget was created. So back to your analogy with the car, you may have your car maintenance, but you may do it based off of your old whatever information you had in your file, but you go talk to the car dealer and you get your 2 or 3 quotes, and you base your budget off of those 2 or 3 quotes. And the budget went in, was put together in December, right before I got here, and when we had our meeting and we talked about the Sandy contract, we didn't have a final Sandy contract at that point. We were still working on some details with that. So it being as close to our budget as it is I think you said within 7%, that's actually pretty good, not having good information at that point. So it's my 2 cents.
So, well,
I think some of it.
These 12 projects are part of the budget, is that correct?
Yes.
And the sense of the board is that these 12 projects are necessary for this year? And cannot be put off till 1 year to the next budget, some of them?
The projects wouldn't have been included if we didn't feel they were necessary.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
I said the projects wouldn't be included if we didn't feel they were necessary.
So they're all 12 projects are of equal priority.
All 12 were addressed in the budget meeting.
And if we didn't feel that they were valued projects, they wouldn't be included.
Jeff, it might help to have a little bit of a conversation on our budget is not like the city's budget. Ours is not a set budget that we have to say, it's a projection.
Yeah, well, so I think you've got a philosophical issue of whether or not you let the budget drive the decision or the need drive the decision. And whether, how you got to the budget, the big change has been, as I indicated, a change in the scope of work and a paring down on what services we need to have from a utility standpoint versus what was put together under the blended city utility contract. I'm pretty confident, and I can't speak for Ed, but in the kind of behind the scenes research and due diligence that Ed performed, as well as Trace in terms of pricing, looking at other utilities and municipalities that receive the service on a per unit basis, on how many computers you're managing. I was pretty impressed with the due diligence that went into looking at the cost of this. So, yes, from a budget standpoint, the State Board of Accounts standpoint, that's one thing. But I think philosophically, you have to decide on, hey, do we trust the projects and what staff put together, or are we, can we push things off? I will note, we had a meeting in the working session about things that have been pushed off, and you kind of see what happens. But that's just my 2 cents on what went into the agreement. I'm not wed to it one way or the other. So
Yeah, no, I can talk a little bit more about the due diligence I did to work with Sandy, because initially what I did is I worked with their on-site staff to put together an inventory list of all of our computers. And I compared those to the city's computers. I made a spreadsheet. And we fixed some discrepancies on that and did some back and forth on that. And then I looked at their server room. And believe it or not, a lot of the server room, although we share it with the city, most of it has to do with our stuff and our projects. We have the North Star system, which is on a virtual computer, and it is something that is really, from talking to Costa, is really difficult to manage. And it's something that there's a lot of projects related to. There's upgrade projects related to new software upgrades we're doing. And I also got a copy of the city contract and did unit cost analysis ratios. Also, we got a contract from, I think it was the city of Lawrence, and we are right in line with what they're charging everybody else. They're not charging us a higher rate than someone else. We have need for more dedicated staff than the city to do some of these projects and some of the things we have going on. Interestingly enough, the day I was touring the server room, it happened to be a day when Costa was working really hard to keep the server room going because we had an HVAC failure, and they had fans going, and we're just trying to keep everything, going. And he was also installing some upgrades at that time. So this wasn't just done in a vacuum. And as far as the projects go, a lot of these are very detailed IT things. I could ask Costa or Jeff to come up and describe some of the projects if you want, but a lot of them we thought they'd be more detailed than you wanted at executive level for the board, but they're all necessary things.
Ed, would it be safe to say that's one reason we're going with just a one-year contract?
Yeah, we looked at, well, I'll tell you, I asked them if there was any benefit to us going to a 3-year contract because we got any cost savings, and for them a 1-year contract and a 3-year contract was the same, so I didn't see any reason to go with a longer contract unless we were getting some sort of benefit from it. So
we had our budget committee, which is 2 members from this board, who met with the chief financial officer and the general manager to prepare a budget. And part of that budget preparation was receiving information from our IT specialist about projects we needed in the upcoming year.
Yes.
And that these 12 projects were identified and the need explained.
Yeah, and Bill chime in. We met with Seth, and Seth broke down a lot of these projects.
He went through everything in detail, yes.
Yeah. As painful, I'm sure it was for him.
Right, yes.
To explain to us. I mean.
We are not IT savvy, yes.
Yeah, if I would, since we have Sandy here, can I put Jeff on the spot to explain everything you know about 12 projects in IT in about 100 words or less?
Yeah.
I know I'm asking the impossible, but I've got to know him pretty well working with him. I think he can do it. So.
The one element outside of the projects, because I'll definitely have Costa speak to the project specifically. You don't want me touching your actual IT devices. There is dedicated staff, additional dedicated staff to the utility with the break, and that actually is kind of the price differential, I believe, between what the original budget amount was, and that was the further discussions of how that split would happen. And with that, when Costa talked to the actual projects, he is much more capable than you'll have with me.
Okay.
Sure. Were there any specific projects on the list that you guys had questions for, or I guess what we do?
Well, I'm the one that asked the question, and I'm like Bill professed, not an IT professional, so I don't understand the projects at all. But I guess I have a little personal bugaboo about government budgets in a way, in that when government agencies present projects, they present the projects and say these are needed, they're all equally important, and therefore none of them can be delayed and need to be done this year. They're all of equal priority. And I have a problem with that. Are they all of equal priority? I have a philosophical problem with that. I'm not saying that this is not the case this time. Go ahead.
Hey, can I interrupt a second? I don't want to, I keep saying, well, first I wanted to take the opportunity to apologize. I keep saying your name wrong. It's Costa. I'm sorry. I mispronounced. I get a name in my head wrong and I mess it up. So, but seeing how these are our contractors and they're IT specialists and not really the philosophical side of things, can I just pick on one project and have you explain it? I'll pick one that looks interesting. Okay. Trust Zone Architecture DMZ Assessment. It's about your fourth one down. Can you just sort of explain what that one's about to a layman? And
Sure. So in a system, in an IT infrastructure, you have certain systems that communicate internally and some that actually talk out to the internet. For example, like a web server. North Star has certain components that customers need to access from the outside for billing purposes. And the Truck Zone Architecture project is basically kind of looking logically how we have those communicate with outside to inside and making sure that all of our systems are as secure as they can be, because you essentially want a little bit of segregation in between the systems. Ones that are exposed to the internet are more vulnerable. So those systems that do talk to the internet have to be a little bit more closely monitored. And mostly what that project is analyzing the systems that do talk to the internet and making sure that they're communicating appropriately with our internal systems. And as far as like project prioritization, we do have certain ones that we have to get done first, or we do have, you know, a logical order that we do want to get them done. But as far as which ones are important and which ones need to get done, they all really do need to get done. None of the projects that we have recommended are things that we would consider optional. They're all kind of essential for a secure IT infrastructure, and kind of things that may have, you know, things that we've been kind of wanting to implement for a long time. So I don't know if that properly answers your questions or not, but
it does. I think I'm going to look at this as an additional request, make my decision on whether the additional request makes sense. So my question, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Then I would move to approve the Sunday Solution Consulting Agreement Amendment Number 1, Statement of Work.
I second that.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by Jim to approve the consulting and professional service agreement with Sondy Solutions. Any other questions or discussions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the explanation and then Q&A.
thanks.
Next item on the agenda is approval of claims. Has everyone had a chance to review claims?
I have a question. I talked to the chief operating financial operator, Sandra, and there was notes on the claims about certain discrepancies, and I asked her about them, and she said those would be taken care of, and also that the correct payments were made to the right ones.
Okay.
So those, she said those corrections would be made.
And you're referring to, I think that I saw, Jim, it was specific accounts
Yeah.
that were just
Some
mentioned
of the accounts
incorrectly.
were misbilled
Right.
and account numbers, stuff like that. I would make a motion to approve the claims.
I second that, as noted.
And I will recuse Lamar, and Lamar Insurance had a bill in there.
All right, motion made by Jim, seconded by Bill, with Dan abstaining. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, thank you. Claims approved. Anybody have any other business that they want to discuss? I want to say a quick thank you to Trace Bowles. This is Trace's last meeting with Lebanon Utilities, and he's been a valuable asset to the utilities. And Trace, we appreciate your service here, so thank you. Anybody have anything else for the board? Anything from the public? Next meeting looks like Wednesday, March 6th at 5 p.m. If there's nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Jim to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.